get access to like a database of employers, different like legal resources, professional resources, a variety of stuff. So if you're interested, QR code there. And then it's $25 also just for the users. And you can scan either one of these. And we're really excited to have this event and appreciate everyone showing up. This is Raiden also for SSDP.
Hey everyone, my name is Raiden Washington. I'm the chapter leader of Student Citizens for Drug Policy at UGA. We're a national organization, largest youth-led grassroots movement in the war on drugs in the entire country. And super excited to have your guys' help last year. This summer we were actually able to successfully decriminalize cannabis here in Athens. So keeping people out of jail, hell yeah. If you'd like to get involved, it's a really great way to get some legal experience now. Don't really have to like do the whole process of, oh, I got a ring high and all that stuff, all that pressure to like make you feel like you have to be perfect. We're happy to take you as you are, wherever you're at in your legal career. We have opportunities to get hands-on legal experience with policy research and writing. Also legal observation when we do demonstrations and protests throughout the city, as well as some movement lawyering to organize the community around the policies we're fighting for. This Thursday, for example, we actually have political action. We're going to be going over to Senator Warnock's office. Our executive director from our national org is coming now, and we're going to ask him to help us keep Biden given his promise to release all cannabis prisoners from jail and prison. We're also currently working on legalizing and decriminalizing cannabis in the entire state, as well as blanket decriminalization for all drugs. As I'm sure a lot of you know, usually when people suffer from substance use, it's because they have a mental health challenge and not necessarily because they just want to be a criminal. So we want to make sure people get the resources that they need. That's also why we're partnering with the Athens anti-discrimination movement and some local legislators to get policies pushed through to protect people's rights to housing, food, economic opportunities, job security, and mental health care here in Athens. So we would love your help with that too. Upcoming, we have a voter empowerment workshop with Outlaw in a couple weeks on the 24th. We're having a costume concert over at Rabbit Hole at the end of the month, and also a decrim workshop next month. If you'd like to scan this code, you can sign our policy petition to legalize or decriminalize pushing for both policies statewide here in Georgia. We also have our link to our GroupMe, all of our social media, all the good stuff to stay plugged in. And I just want to share this quick video to give you an idea of what SSDP does overall.
So SSDP is a movement of 5,000 young people who are organizing our peers all over the world to change the legal status of drugs and learn how to be badass activists in the process.
And I didn't realize the war on drugs failed me until my freshman year when I joined SSDP, and I remember learning the term, the war on drugs, and then followed by harm reduction.
You know how they say that there's at least 7 people on this planet that are exactly like you? I think in the past 6 hours I've met more than 7 people who've had very different experiences in life but have resulted in the same outcomes, which is being here at SSDP today.
As soon as I got to SSDP 2019, I was just overwhelmed with positivity and compassion. The energy here is at such a high frequency that you just can't even imagine it without being here yourself.
Really thankful to this organization for just helping me become more of a professional with talking to, local decision makers and people who shape policy all over the world today.
We wouldn't be able to offer valuable resources to our students and train them and educate them without the help of our supporters and sensible society members.
I've made so many different connections from just attending this conference that I truly feel confident in my research endeavors, in my endeavors as a chapter leader, and every other pursuit that I have with my chapter and those who are in my chapter.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, hey y'all, I'm Charlie. I'm a third L student here. I'm a member of the National Lawyers Guild, and we're super happy and excited to be working with the ACS and the Students for Sensible Drug Policy. policy to put this on. And yeah, I'm just gonna give a little bit of background about the NLG, and then we'll go into the legal observer training. And we'll have time for questions at the end, I think, but if you have any questions, and you wanna stop me, like, feel free. Yeah, the National Lawyers Guild is one of the oldest progressive lawyer groups in the country. We were founded in 1937, and we're initially working to unionize certain industries during the New Deal, but then went on to guild lawyers have prosecuted Nazis in Nuremberg. They worked on repealing Jim Crow laws in Chicago in the 40s. During the 60s and 70s, they were representing Black Panthers and Vietnam War activists, the American Indian movement, and the Puerto Rican independence movement. Famously, the Guild represented Angela Davis in her criminal case, and then also represented the Chicago 7, which is the subject of the Chicago 7 Netflix movie. If you've seen it, it's pretty good. If you haven't, I recommend it. It's a little bit Hollywood, but it's fun. Sacha Baron Cohen is great. Kind of like ACS, this is a student organization here, but also a broader national organization, and you can sign up to be a member as a law student. It's a small fee on a sliding scale, but it gives you access to other guild lawyers in the area and training materials. It's a great way to just kind of network and meet like-minded attorneys and law students. Okay, so legal observer training. One of the things that the NLG is best known for is this. And if you've ever been at a protest and seen people in these bright green hats, those are legal observers from our organization. There are other organizations that do it as well, though. And I'm going to skip some of these because we already gave a little bit of background, but I'm going to play this fun little video from two long-standing guild attorneys. And it's got some foul language, but it's all good fun.
Oh, hello. We were just talking about you kids.
I'm Denise Heberly.
And I'm Bill Goodman.
Together, we've been fighting fascism for over 50 years.
And so much has changed over those 50 years, such as the ingredients to a successful firebomb.
And the glass that bank windows are made of.
But there's one thing that hasn't changed over 50 years, something that is so important to tell you kids who are new to this movement.
Shut the fuck up. You're sitting in the police transport van after a protest?
Shut the fuck up. In a holding cell with your comrades?
Shut the fuck up. Cop knocks on your door?
Shut the fuck up.
Texting on an unsecured device?
Shut the fuck up. Pulled over by the cops after a protest?
Shut the fuck up. Cop just asking about your day?
Shut the fuck up. Feds, call your mom?
Tell your mother.
I will be willing to email anyone this presentation if you want to watch the last 40 seconds of that. And the ACS, we have a video from last year. I don't know if y'all want me to play that.
Yeah.
Cool.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, a single document, the foundation of our nation, a grand experiment in democracy, unfolding through the years. Through conflict and suffering, we progressed and grew. We became a more perfect union. But are we done yet? We have so much left to do. Persistent wrongs to right, needless suffering, the corroding power of wealth, corporate influence, a stacked deck, and lawlessness at the very top. But this is our time to rise up, speak up, our time to fight, our time to win. ACS is on the front lines of this fight, pushing the boundaries of legal thought, speaking out, building the next generation of leaders, keeping tabs on our elected officials, empowering our network, and offering our vision, a vision of the Constitution as a force for good, for progress, justice, freedom, for a more perfect union. Are you with us?
That promo was super awesome. As Raiden walks through, better than I'm about to, but students principal of drug policy are awesome and are largely responsible for marijuana being decriminalized in Athens. So again, that's extremely cool, and we're super excited to be working with these groups. I'm gonna show one more quick video, at least part of it, just so anyone who hasn't been in a protest situation and hasn't seen what legal observation kind of looks like in practice, just so you have an idea before we get into the specifics.
Legal observer needs to stay neutral as far as the protests go. We need to stay apart, we need to observe. We're here to serve as witnesses, essentially. So we're not getting actively involved in the protest.
Well, I just keep an eye on things. I take notes, copious notes. And I just watch, and if I see something going on, you know, I can snap a picture of it.
When we're out here with 10 or more, there's no citations. They're a lot friendlier. They're playing the non-biased job they're supposed to be playing.
Okay, so legal observers are typically law students, legal workers, and lawyers, but not exclusively. This is not an activity you need to be barred or on your way to being barred to participate in. So long as you've been trained and know what you're doing, really anyone can partake in this way. And NLG is, like I said, one organization that has done this for a long time, but the ACLU also has their own legal observation network. Here in Athens, there's a group called Athens Legal Solidarity, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, but they do the same thing and have been involved in Athens protests, especially around the 2020 uprisings that happened here and just about everywhere else. The core responsibilities, as that video kind of touched on, are to observe, document, and record law enforcement actions towards demonstrators. We want to gather evidence in case that can be used in proceedings against the police following the protest, and ultimately we want to keep protesters safe while they're exercising their First Amendment rights to speak and to protest. And examples of things that we would be observing and documenting: anyone who's arrested, any threats of force or use of force, people being denied access to public forums where they're supposed to be able to speak, or infringement of protected expression. And we document these things for use in subsequent legal actions against law enforcement or in defense of protesters, and sometimes in combating media narratives following an event or an action. And again, our presence is one of neutral observation, not active participation in any type of demonstration. And this is important because it discourages police abuse, makes them accountable to a group of legal workers who are just there to document and hopefully minimize harm by keeping track of anyone who is So, to that point, it's very important that legal observers avoid arrest. And sometimes that's not possible. There have been instances of legal observers being arrested. That's not supposed to happen. We have a right to be there. But being arrested is dangerous for a few reasons. One, it takes one set of eyes off of demonstration. You plan to have a certain amount of people doing this work, and then someone's gone. It just leaves blind spots. And then also, any notes that you have taken are potentially very harmful in the hands of the police. So, very important to remain neutral and to avoid arrest, if at all possible. If you do find yourself going to legal observe, there are a few things to do in preparation. You want to have a notepad and pen at all times so you can document the things you're seeing. Water, sunscreen, hat, and a charged phone are very important. You want to clearly identify yourself. If you are legal observing under the branch of the NLG, it's going to be a green reflective hat, but in any case, a reflective vest or something that makes you stand out and designates you so that protesters and law enforcement understands your role. You always want to work in teams, and if at all possible, you want to connect with the organizers who have put together a demonstration. That's not always possible. In 2020, there were just spontaneous movements all over, and so there wasn't really organizers to connect with in a lot of cases, or just the timing of it makes it impossible. But you want people to understand your role and not view you as, make it clear that you're not a police officer, make it clear that you're not documenting things for the sake of prosecuting. So establishing a connection with the people there is crucially important. And the NLG training recommends that you work in groups of at least 2 or 3. I think that's a good rule of thumb. You could need far more depending on the size of a protest. And it's important to have a clear plan of where to meet after things have subsided, where to meet if things go wrong, how to be in touch with people if someone loses a phone or if someone is arrested. And I would highly recommend, if you're engaging in this work, to have an encrypted messaging service. Signal is a good one, Keybase is another, just because it's safer and the information you might be texting to other legal observers is sensitive potentially. While you're observing, you do need to follow orders from police when necessary, but you don't want to be pushed around or ceding ground too easily. We do have a right to be there. We do have, a right to observe and to protect the First Amendment rights of protesters. But police officers will often try and kind of hedge you out of the situation, act like you don't have a right to be there, so you do want to assert yourself, but use your best judgment, and if it looks like arrest is imminent, then you kind of back off. You want to document the scene before anything happens. So as you're marching or moving, take notes of where you are, what intersection, take notes of things as you see them developing, if things seem to be escalating, if there seems to be a group of people who are not with the broader group of organizers, document that. But it's really important to be actually taking notes, because when something dramatic happens, then there's often not time to take down the important details that you would need. Counter-protesters and vigilantes and things like that, that's been popping up a lot lately, as I'm sure a lot of people know. Georgia is a very firearm-friendly state. It's an open carry state, and so often you'll see armed people counter-protesting or protesting, depending on the situation. We are not armed when we're doing this work, but it's just always something to have in mind that situations could become dangerous, and you want to be aware of anyone who's there with bad intentions. So things specifically to document, and these 2 photos are from Athens in 2020. is pretty shocking for a town this size, I think. You want to make sure you know which law enforcement agencies are present. That's not always going to be the Athens Clarke County Police if you're in Athens. I mean, it could be sheriff's deputies, could be federal agents, could be the National Guard. It just depends. You want to make sure you document everyone who might be there. Take notes of the uniforms people are wearing, so you can distinguish between different actors. If you can, you want to find out who is in charge as far as law enforcement goes. You can ask an officer, like, who is your supervisor here. They should tell you. Sometimes they won't, but information like that is important in subsequent legal proceedings, and just for kind of establishing yourself as a neutral observer. If there's a certain point person you can speak with to de-escalate things with the police that are there, that can be a useful tactic. And then of course you want to document how the police or law enforcement are treating and conducting themselves at the event. If you witness an arrest, things you need to get from the arrestee are, most importantly, the legal name and the date of birth. A lot of times people won't use their legal name, they'll go by something else, a nickname, etc. But we need the name that they will be booked in jail under, so that's very important. And to get their date of birth. Also important is to get any medical concerns, disability information, things that might make them high risk once they're in jail. For example, someone is diabetic, you need to know that. You need to know if they have insulin with them, or if they'll need that brought to the jail, if they're at risk without that medicine for however long they might be locked up. Do not bring up any question of immigration status unless someone specifically tells you to. That's not something you want to bring to the attention of an arresting officer or law enforcement. If you witness an arrest and you get that information from the protester, you can ask law enforcement, what are the charges? What law enforcement is making this arrest, or who do you work with? Where will the arrestee be held? And ask for the officer's name and badge number. I noticed in 2020, especially, that police officers were showing up with tape over their name and badge number. This was in Chicago, not here, but I've heard that happening in other places too. That is illegal, but it does happen. So any identifying information, if you can't get those things, what they look like, age, distinguishing features, where they are, and the time of the arrest, that can be helpful in the absence of that information. And then you also want to make notes of the context of the arrest. Was there a warning given? Was the protester complying or resisting? Any statements made by the officer during the arrest. After observing, you want to meet back at the designated location. Pass your notes off to a facilitator. You want to have someone in charge or someone designated in that role beforehand, so you can consolidate everyone's notes. We don't want crucial information kind of walking off once the event is finished. It's good to debrief with people, with the other legal observers, make sure that you're on the same page about things that happen. Sometimes people's recollections can be solidified when they speak soon after the event with their comrades. And check in on yourself. Some of these situations can be very stressful, can be dangerous. Make sure everyone is okay, everyone's feeling okay. You want to make sure that everyone has a safe way home. It's not uncommon for protesters or legal observers or anyone involved in these things to be kind of singled out once everyone is dispersed. It's always best, if you can, to leave with somebody, or if not, let somebody know that you are leaving, so that they can be aware if you end up getting stopped by the police. After you've met up, you want to remove identifying clothing, so everyone knows that you're no longer actively observing, and to not draw attention to yourself as you're leaving. so I just wanted to talk about some of the things that have been going on, especially since 2020, that you might want to be aware of if you're protesting or legal observing. This bill actually did not pass, I believe, although I'm not convinced that if not something similar isn't going to be passed again, but it was SB 171, passed after the George Floyd uprisings, which criminalized protesting in a lot of cases, gave municipalities financial incentive to prevent protests from happening, or any kind of demonstration from happening. And then this specific to Athens, these LRADs, long-range acoustic devices. After 2020, the Athens Police Department obtained one of these. And what it does is just shoots high-pitched sounds that can like shatter your eardrum if you're close enough. And it's like a debilitating device that is really dangerous and kind of shocking that we have that here. But something to be aware of. If you see that, you want to be far away from it if you can, to the side of it if you can, because it's a sound cannon. And if you're standing in front of it, it can be very dangerous. And that kind of concludes my presentation on legal observation, and I'd love to get some questions if you have them. But just to leave on a note about things going on in Athens that you can be involved in addition to the ACS and the Students for Sensible Drug Policy, there's the Economic Justice Coalition, the Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement, the Athens Housing Advocacy Team, who are currently working with tenants in Athens who have been displaced in mass. There's about 600 units that have been purchased by a Florida private equity company, and all these apartments now stop taking Section 8 vouchers. Rents have gone up, sometimes they've doubled, but gone up in a really shocking way in a very small amount of time. So there's a effort going on right now to unionize tenants, and the housing advocacy team is part of that if you're interested. And also the Lindentown Project has been ongoing, seeking reparations and justice for Black families in Athens who were essentially forced from their homes in order to expand campus several decades ago, but they were, there's still a lot of money owed, and that's been going on for quite some time. It's a great project that I suggest checking out. And Andrew is going to have a few words to say as well, and then we'll take questions that you have.
Yeah, maybe afterwards, is that cool?
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrew. I'm a guild member and a 2L. I just want to talk a little bit about some legal observation I did back in Chicago. It's not going to introduce anything that hasn't already been touched on, but it'll kind of illustrate a specific situation. I thought it was really well run. It was with an organization called Asada's Daughters, based in the south side of Chicago. It's named after Asada Shakur. So this was in a gentrifying neighborhood in Hyde Park, where the University of Chicago is, which is kind of a bubble of affluence that's sort of isolated from the surrounding working class Black communities. And every Halloween, a lot of the families in those communities will drop their kids off, like young teens, in Hyde Park because it's a safer place to trick or treat and stuff like that. But over a course of a couple of years, it had kind of started to shift into an informal protest as well. There would be, people would get a little bit rowdy, and more police would show up every year. The city was really mad about it. So the city was talking to the mayor's office, who was trying to get Asada's Daughters to basically help community police this event, in collaboration with like citizen patrol type things. They didn't want to do that, so instead they said, well, we won't do that, we're gonna instead do a legal observation, cop watch sort of thing. So it was super well done. They had a community center where there was like a central HQ with radios and things like that, so we had walkie-talkies in addition to the encrypted chat that Charlie mentioned. We went in pairs. Every pair had a guild attorney with the green hat and then a non-attorney observer. That way we could spread out the expertise the best. And yeah, the rest of it was the same, notepad, camera, all the rest. And the thing that was really helpful though with the HQ was that we could get a sense of the big picture of how the situation was developing, because it was big crowds, and also at one point CPD shut down the buses to and from the area. So we had bus cards, or we had like Uber cards, I think it was, to like help get kids home when they were stranded. But we wouldn't have known what was happening or when to start doing that unless we report back and like get the bird's eye view from HQ. They also had, it was like, you know, November in Chicago, so they had like a warming station and snacks and hot cocoa and like hand warmers and all the rest, so we could like trade off in shifts. And you don't necessarily think about the elements being a big factor in these things, but they definitely can. Here would be more heat, but either way, it's something to think about when you're out there for 3-4 hours, something like that. And the one other element would be, again, like Charlie mentioned, people don't necessarily know who you are with a hat and a vest and stuff like that. You're filming, cameras make people nervous. People don't necessarily know whose side you're on, things like that. You know, you're in a big crowd, things are getting intense, the police are pushing people in, you know, people kept trying to take my phone and camera, people were like yelling at us. And what helped it was that we were working really closely with Asada's daughters who were, you know, known in the community, who had connections. And so once like an Asada's member would come and be standing next to us, then they could explain who we were and like people recognized them. So point being, those community connections and making sure, you know, you've done some groundwork ahead of time is really, really helpful. That's gonna vary between what type of protest it is, obviously. But I found that to be a really helpful element. And then, yeah, the only other thing is, and I think Charlie mentioned this too, but making sure you delete everything off your phone. As much as it's important to like collect evidence, you know, filming the police, you're usually gonna be ending up filming other people as well, just because everything gets real squished in. So you don't wanna have that sitting around, don't have loose ends and things like that. So again, the debrief helps with that, because then you can kind of, you know, make sure we're on the same page. Yeah.
Disorientation.
Oh, yes. 2 weeks from now, we are having an NLG disorientation. This is, along with the Legal Observer training, is kind of one of the signature NLG things. It's just supposed to be kind of a guide for, you know, radical-minded law students to kind of explain everything they don't cover in your traditional orientation. We're a little bit later than would have been ideal, but you know, if there's anyone else in the crowd who are interested, it should be a good time. We have a whole packet. It'll be pretty fun. We're also going to do a movie night on the Trial of Chicago 7 movie that Charlie mentioned. Not sure when that'll be yet, either before or after the DISO, but if you sign up, we have a sign-up sheet back there with pamphlets as well, and if you're interested, that'll be coming up. But yeah, if you want to come back up, maybe both field questions.
Sure. And ACS and Raiden want to come field questions or whatever.
Yeah, we can do it as a team.
Well, if there are questions, we can ask.
Are there questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the video, the woman talked about taking handwritten notes, and then you just said recording and filming. What's the preference to write or record? Are there any concerns with recording in terms of like consent to be filmed and stuff?
That is a really good question. I've personally seen more legal observers taking handwritten notes because of the worry of capturing something incriminating, or something unhelpful, or just, you know, people not having consented to being filmed. I think that you kind of have to use your best judgment, and a moment where you would want to film is if you saw a specific incident going down with a police officer and someone being arrested or something like that, some specific act of violence by the police against a protester. That would be a good time to pull out your phone and record a video or take photos. Or if someone has been roughed up in some way and they have visible injuries, asking them, can I take a photo of this to document it? And if they say yes, that's important evidence to capture as well. But that's a great question, because it is risky to filming or taking photos of things just because of how much might be going on. You might capture things you weren't intending to.
And obviously it varies state by state. You know, you have to double check the state law and consent to be recorded and stuff like that. But I think, yeah, strategically, I saw more good come from taking handouts and things like that. Honestly, the most good came from getting people's date of birth and name and medical stuff when they were being arrested, because that would allow parents and community members to actually know where people were being taken and go and get them bailed out quicker.
this is a follow-up question. In terms of like deleting or throwing away notes, how long do you wait to do that? And are there concerns with like spoliation of evidence type issues?
That's a good question too. I don't actually know. I'm gonna be completely honest on that part. The way we did it was all in a group chat that had disappearing messages automatically set.
Okay.
So that's a good consideration. This is like the standard practice that I've seen, but I don't know the exact legal footing that it stands on. You know.
Exact legal footing. As far as you say, like tampering with evidence, is that?
Yeah.
So that wouldn't be at issue unless you had been already arrested or like been subpoenaed or something. But I mean, that's one of the risks of once everyone leaves, if someone were to come, if you were to be arrested and you have that on your phone, it wouldn't be very difficult for me to search warrant to search the phone. So I think one way to kind of avoid that danger would be like in the same way that you're compiling notes with facilitator, sending any like visual documentation into an encrypted chat and then deleting it from your physical devices. So at least only one person has a phone with that on it, and hopefully if it's on Signal or Keybase, even opening the phone wouldn't allow them in without a password. I think that would be one maybe best practice. Anyone else?
I do have a question about, like, how do you get, so people that aren't familiar with, I know Andrew, you brought up how you had the, like, community organization with you, but if you don't have that, like, how do you, like, even establish, like, is there something you can say to maybe, like, help establish that trust, like, a little bit better besides saying, like, I'm a neutral observer, what's your legal name and date of birth?
Great question. I think part of the groundwork for that comes before it actually reaches that point. I think events tend to start off a little bit milder and then things escalate. It's a little bit later on. So establishing yourself beforehand, depending on the event too, it might be clear that the community involved has someone that is kind of either explicitly or just de facto become a point person. They're communicating with the police, communicating with other organizers, things like that. If you can identify somebody like that to introduce yourself to and let them know your purpose there, they may say we don't want you here too, which is something to respect, obviously, but you can sometimes just kind of pick out from being there and evaluating the situation who might be kind of a leadership figure and speaking with them. And then I would definitely do that before engaging any police officers, but if you do see a police officer who seems to be calling the shots, you can also establish yourself to them, let them know who's there. And I think that's one way to go about just letting everyone know if you really have no connections with the group involved.
Yeah, I think as far as establishing it to the police, the hats and the vests help a lot because it's clear you got a uniform. And as far as to participants, just saying like, you know, when you're asking this stuff, once it's clear that you're there in some official like capacity, just saying I'm out with the police is like pretty clear, you know, that's straight to the point. And usually that's as much information as people need. You can also say I'm here to help you, stuff like I'm a legal observer. People recognize the word. Again, it's a matter of knowing your audience and stuff like that. But I found just a simple like, I'm not here, I'm not with the police. That's all people need.
And a lot of times too, if someone is arrested and you go to get their information, they don't give it to you because they don't know you, someone around will know that person. You can take more time to explain who you are and why you're asking for them, and maybe get the information from them. Because yeah, sometimes just in the given moment, you might not be able to get the information, they might not want to give it to you.
I will add, back in 2020 when I went to some Black Lives Matter protests in Atlanta, there were clearly people who, even though it was like a pop-up protest, that were kind of leading the group, letting them know when where police were blocking off roads. They had like megaphones and they're saying, okay, we're gonna take this route, and like we're kind of at the head of the march. So I would say looking for anyone that's sort of giving the general audience their direction would be a good place to go to as far as connecting with the protesters on the ground, even if you don't know necessarily who organized it or have had contact with them.
Yeah, and that's one of the key points of just asking for information that the police will already be obtaining through the arrest. Like, you don't wanna ask my immigration status, you don't wanna ask like, who are you here with, or anything like that that might not come up. It's, you know, information that isn't incriminating, it's just necessary to locate them once they're taken to some sort of holding facility. Any other questions?
How does that work in real time when you're trying to ask someone's name and date of birth? I imagine there's a lot of chaos and confusion. So are you like following them as they're being arrested? How would that work exactly?
Yeah, so you're right, it is pretty difficult, and that makes the whole emotional aspect of making it clear that you're there to help efficiently difficult as well. I wish I had a hard and fast rule of like, I mean, yeah, you do follow along, you know, the experience that I had with it was just, yeah, someone's getting bundled into a car, and you just kind of follow along as best you can, and you want to not escalate either, so you don't want to be like yelling, because you don't want to be panicking them or panicking the police more. You want to keep everyone as calm as you can, so you just, you know, calmly repeat the question as many times as you can, say, you know, we want to know where you're being taken and stuff like that, if you can like throw in a line like that so they know why you're asking. But yeah, just keeping a calm, even tone, following along, and not repeating the question a lot of times, I guess, is from what I remember. Though I will say also this was a little while ago at this point, so my memory might not be.
And oftentimes, especially if it's like a march, people are moving, when someone gets arrested, it'll be like a very noticeable like pause in the action. Usually there will be more police moving like over there, so it's kind of a commotion that everyone notices. And there's probably a lot of people gathered around, both police officers and other members of the march, trying to figure out what's going on. So there's kind of room to shoulder in there and ask for the information. It usually in my experience, it hasn't been like people just being disappeared into a van. I think that unfortunately does happen sometimes, but it usually does take a while for the officer to make the arrest. They usually have someone sitting in cuffs for a while they're getting some sort of patrol vehicle to put them in. So there is some time after the initial, like, someone gets grabbed, where you can get some of this information effectively. Anyone else?
As far as events, I know you have the organizations up there. Can you talk a bit about learning when legal observers would be needed?
Yeah, so I have been in touch with the Athens Legal Solidarity group, and they will, they kind of have their finger on the pulse with a lot of different movements, and they will get requests oftentimes. So that would be one way, and I'm happy to share the information with that group to people in a follow-up email. Sometimes it's just hearing about it in that way. But the other thing to do is to keep track on social media or word of mouth of what organizations like this or SSDP are doing. Because those kind of pop up sometimes on short notice or just depending on where the projects are, and you can reach out to them. You need legal observers for this thing that you plan on Friday, type of thing. And oftentimes, kind of that point, a lot of times it'll be an event that seems like it doesn't need a legal observer, and you might be right. One, though, you never know, and two, if you go to something that is just kind of tame, but you're there, you're meeting people, and when something big happens, they'll have you in mind already. But it is kind of an informal thing to connect with these groups. So part of it is just being ready and prepared to do it on short notice, I think. I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure if I did.
No, it does. Do these groups know that there's a group here of people interested in it? Like, I'm assuming, would they kind of be able to go through you and be like, we're thinking of something, we might need some observers?
Yeah, the NLG, our like student chapter has not been, we probably should be.
Yeah, we're kind of reactivating as a chapter right now because it went a little bit dormant during COVID when everything was online. So one of our big projects right now is like systematically getting back in touch with all of the local organizations and making sure they know that we're here and to help with stuff like that. Similarly with Atlanta
the Athens Legal Solidarity Group is local attorneys and then volunteers who they will offer trainings to. And they do have a longer standing relationship with some of these groups. I believe they do have a relationship with the housing advocacy team and with the anti-discrimination movements. But that's another thing where it's lawyers with careers and things, so it's anyone who's interested and like vigorous about it can definitely help out. And a lot of times they aren't hearing about things that students are. So I will include their contact information for anyone who'd like it in a follow-up email. But if you hear of something and you think it needs legal observers, yeah, you can definitely reach out to, I think, any one of us or the Legal Solidarity Group.
I think one important thing to note too is some protests are sanctioned by municipalities and some aren't, which is why they're more like a pop-up, there's no free advertising sort of thing. Mariah Parker is one really good person to follow, like on Instagram, generally online. They basically post about every city sanctioned protest or demonstration that's going to happen. But there are some groups like the Athens People's Budget, for example, that was working with the Renaissance Project for like a pop-up sort of surprise on UGA homecoming demonstration that we did last year. And we weren't sure if we were going to get arrested or not, so we didn't advertise it. But that could definitely be something that I could like pass along through our secure servers if people like to stay up to date with group chat. We could just pass along opportunities that way too. But social media is definitely a really good way to keep in touch with folks. Mariah and Sarah Gary. Sarah's an attorney that's been working with ADOT to work on affordable housing stuff. So just a couple names I can have to reach out to online to see where they're at. They post a lot of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we're like running out of time a little bit, and probably gotta turn this room over for a 1 o'clock class, I think. But does anyone have any last second questions, concerns?
Thanks so much for coming, everyone.
Yeah.